Today we're going to look at section 3 of the BMAT test, the essay response, and one particular part that many students may find problematic, the explanation of the proposition. The remaining parts are, by far the majority of cases, the counter-argument paragraph and the position argument, and we'll look at both of those at a later date. Anyway, back to the explanation. Okay, so let's start by looking at a real question. Dolphins are very intelligent and so similar to humans that they are worthy of a special ethical status, that of non-human persons. Just what are we being asked to do when we are asked to explain what this statement means? Firstly, we're being asked to take it as a statement. For statement, we can also, for these purposes, use proposition. So we're being asked to explain what is being proposed. And what is being proposed is a particular position for us to hold or believe. So the statement is an invitation for us to believe something, in this case about how to treat dolphins. But the proposition without support is just an assertion. What the task is asking us is to make this assertion into an argument that can be presented or countered. And we need to construct a connected series of statements in the form of premises, perhaps arranged and intended to help us understand the proposition. At the moment, all we've got is one sentence, so we've got a bit of work to do, and that work involves building premises to eventually arrive at this statement as the end point of an argument. So let's imagine a more commonplace scenario for starters. Imagine it's raining and someone says, "You should take an umbrella." And I say to them, "Explain yourself." And they say that, well, rain consists of water, and water is wet. And umbrellas protect the holder from getting wet from water in the form of rain. And I assume that you don't want to get wet. And I see also that you have easy access to an umbrella over there. And thus, to comply with your wishes to avoid getting wet by rain, you can avail yourself of your rain-protecting umbrella. So you should take an umbrella. Now, if I explain the statement that way, the rain would probably have stopped by the time I got to reaching for my brolly. Clearly, this is a rather ridiculous example, but what it shows is that we can unpack as simple a statement as "you should take an umbrella" into a fully expanded argument. And if we backfill with a couple of assumptions about it raining at the moment, we can get our explanation paragraph. If we can do this with such a simple statement, complaints from potential BMAT candidates that they can't write a paragraph explaining an essay proposition, such as that dolphins should be granted ethical status, look pretty weak. Anyway, pause the slideshow here and have a read at how I've unpacked our umbrella example. Before we return to our dolphin example and see how we might write an explanation paragraph, let's look at how not to write the explanation paragraph. Remember, the task is to explain an assertion for dolphins being given special ethical status, that of non-human persons. Imagine that a BMAT candidate produces the explanatory paragraph that you see on the screen. Let's have a look at it. Shouldn't take too long, as it's only 2 sentences. Unfortunately, both of these are problematic. With regard to the first, does it follow from being intelligent that self-awareness is heightened? Is somebody more self-aware if they're more intelligent? Well, possibly, but it's going to take a bit of arguing for in the form of reasons to believe that. The second sentence is no more helpful, as the reference to equal rights doesn't tell us in which domain they're to be exercised. Not to vote, I presume. Anyway, the question doesn't refer to equal rights. That's an inference out of dolphins having special ethical status, and not a reasonable one at that, as it goes beyond the facts. After all, they might have this enhanced status and still be seen as inferior to humans, mightn't they? in commenting on the candidate's explanation, I pointed out that the concepts need to be unpacked a little more here for us to understand how people use them to believe such a statement. The analogy between dolphins and human intelligence is extended into rights, an area outside of the reach of the proposition we're being asked to look into. Clearly, here intellect is being used as a sufficient condition for status, equal rights or non-human person, when it might only be a necessary condition. Okay, let's have a go at a slightly more rigorous explanation of the proposition and give a clear unpacking as to just what it might be used to mean. First of all, let's decide where we need to end up. Then consider from what premise we might start our journey towards that goal. Perhaps our first premise might be that P1, dolphins are not human organisms, they are non-human. And then the following premises might be applied towards the assertion. At least now we have a position that can be argued for from reasonable premises, even if we might not agree with it. We may see problems with individual premises, but we'll still be able to accept that it's an attempt at a reasoned argument and should be respected as such. Now I'm in a position to write this into prose, from which we might get a paragraph like this. Now, given the expectations of the test, this paragraph now looks really quite compelling as a construction of a potential argument from starting premises. Well, actually one a single assertion. Now, I don't expect you to go through the same process when constructing an explanation paragraph. My purpose here is just to show you that the explanation paragraph is a construction of an argument in prose form from a single assertion or proposition. And this doesn't contain comments on the proposition itself, that is, no evaluation. That can come later in our position paragraph. Many candidates say to me that they can't get an explanation out of a single sentence into a paragraph. You can see from what we've done here that by making every step in thinking explicit, the paragraph expands, and at the same time the explanation becomes extremely clear and uncluttered. Anyway, you've seen how we practice going about it, so let's look at a recent BMAT question. I want you to look at the proposition and then put the premises that I've derived into logical order that you think best makes for a persuasive argument. Take your time. Learning best to stage an argument takes awareness of underlying assumptions to make support most plausible. So stop the slideshow here and think about the logical order of the premises used. A reasonable logical order for these premises might be as shown here. This pattern builds from stage to stage until we get at the proposition we require, without anything extraneous such as evaluation or future effects or irrelevant premises creeping in. Once again, we can write this up to get a fully fledged explanation that arrives back at the proposition that we started out with. Anyway, you've seen how we can practice creating premises and had a go at setting logical order in premises, so let's take a step forward and have a full go ourselves. Here is another BMAT question. Remember, in our explanation, we're not looking to establish whether or not we agree with it. We only want to present an analysis of meaning. Remember to put the proposition at the bottom as if it were the conclusion of an argument. Consider why the wider needs of society might trump individual rights, and then consider why this might be important. Once you've considered these questions, you should have a pretty strong framework. So pause the slideshow whilst you have a go at building a set of premises that arrive at this proposition in a series of reasonable stages. What did you end up with as a set of premises? Do your stages neatly link to arrive at the proposition, or have you missed out a stage? Have you got anything in there that might look like evaluation or future effects outside of the proposition? Anyway, just for the record, here are my premises, and pause the slideshow once more and compare this with your unpacking of the proposition. Here, the very least we can say is that from the derived premises from the proposition, we've created an argument, can we not? From these, it should be very easy to write an excellent explanation of the proposition, something like this. Practicing this approach until it becomes a BMAT thought habit will make writing an explanation spontaneously far more methodical, concise, clear, and on message. And that's how we score our marks after all.